Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you this morning here. Welcome to those of you joining us online, and also a shout out to our Impact Campus this morning. Are you guys familiar with Waldo? You guys know Waldo, right? Where's Waldo when you try to find Waldo? We are extremely blessed this morning to have Waldo visiting Aldersgate. Have you seen Waldo this morning? Anybody know where Waldo is? Have you seen Waldo? I see some things. Oh, right here. Here's Waldo right here. Everybody give Waldo a round of applause for showing up and visiting us this morning. That's actually Evan Gomez, our communications director. He doesn't really make a good Waldo because he's 6'6", but he was a little easy to spot this morning. But sometimes Waldo's harder to find. Have you seen these things where you try to find Waldo? Anybody see Waldo here in the picture that's before you? Anybody? I see some of you that are thinking you need some new glasses this morning. It takes us forever to find Waldo up there, and you would think it would be easier because he's wearing red and white stripes and he's supposed to stand out, but sometimes he just doesn't stand out. And could we say this morning that sometimes that's how we feel about God? That in the back of our mind we know he's there, we know he's got to be around, but sometimes he just seems absent. It just doesn't seem like he's with us. Doesn't seem like he's in the middle of our circumstance, our situation. Just seems that he's not easy to find. We've been in this message series now in the month of August called When Your Faith Isn't Working. And we've been talking about things such as this. We started off talking about when the goodness of God is hard to find. When a good God, that we know he's there, it's just sometimes we can't see his goodness in the middle of wherever we're at. We talked about when doubt creeps in, and in our faith when we begin to struggle with doubt, and how doubt is actually a thing that takes us deeper in our faith if we let it. Last week we talked about how sometimes in our faith, not when it's not working, but when it is working, we have to give up having the answer to everything. In fact, faith at its best is saying, I don't know the answer. This morning we're going to continue in this series. The title of today's message is When God Seems Absent. When we just want to go, where's God? I can't find him. I don't see him. And to do that this morning, we're going to use a prophet out of the Old Testament. So if you got a Bible with you this morning or a phone that you like to use your Bible app on, neither of those, you can reach down there in the seat in front of you and grab a Bible. And I want you to go to the Old Testament book of Habakkuk, or Habakkuk, however you like to pronounce it. You may hear me pronounce it both ways. It's because I get mixed up. Most of the time I say Habakkuk. He's an Old Testament prophet. You'll find him near the end of the Old Testament, or if you're on your phone app, you just type in HAB and it'll go there, all right? The prophet was living at a time when God's people were divided, things weren't going well, and Habakkuk was called by God to speak truth into God's people. Oftentimes it wasn't very popular truth, and Habakkuk himself is wrestling with the truth. He's wrestling with where God is, and we see that early on in the book of Habakkuk, or in the message or the story of Habakkuk. In chapter 1, we'll read verses 2, 3, and 4, and you can see Habakkuk going, where is Waldo? Where's God? Where is he in all this? I just can't seem to find him. Listen, I'm reading out of the English Standard Version translation. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not say, where do you make me see iniquity, and why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Can you hear the cry of Habakkuk here saying, God, where are you in all this? Now, here's what he's talking about. Around Habakkuk at this time, by the way, he was a prophet to these people, called to give them God's message, and there's sin everywhere. I mean, they're doing this wrong, and they're doing this wrong, and they're living this way wrong, and they're not doing anything right. Now listen, they were under the law. Remember the Old Testament law? So there were very specific things that they were supposed to be doing, and very specific things they were not supposed to be doing. The things they were supposed to be doing, they weren't. The things they were not supposed to be doing, they were. And Habakkuk saw this everywhere, and he's crying out to God, God, this is not right. Where are you in all this? Well, why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you letting your people live this way? This is not right. And here's what Habakkuk's about to find out in the story. He's about to find out that God's going to do something, and it's not what Habakkuk would want. He's about to allow the Babylonians to come in and conquer them and take them from their homeland into exile. And then he's certainly asking God, where are you in this? This doesn't make sense. It's like Habakkuk is saying, this is not how this works. This is not how any of this works. Barna, the guy that does research all the time, especially Christian research, several years ago posted a research, and the question was, if you could ask God anything and be assured that God would answer you, what question would you ask? And the majority, by far, was, where is God in all the suffering in the world? Because we just don't, we don't have an answer for that. It doesn't make sense to us, and we struggle with that. And sometimes when we get to that place, we think our faith isn't working because we think faith should work like a sitcom. Right? Like that we're in this time of year. This is a great time of year, going from August into September, from summer into fall. Yesterday, college football was back on TV. Can I get an amen? That means that pumpkin spice is about to be everywhere, right? Just a couple of weeks ago, Amy and I were in Hobby Lobby together. Christmas is everywhere already. That means that the Hallmark Channel will start making their movie, not making, they show the same ones over and over and over and over, right? Like Amy and I have a disagreement about these Hallmark movies. Well, I walk into one that she's watching because she loves them and she will do nothing but watch them if we let her. And I walk into one and I'm like, I've seen this one before. And she's like, you've seen this one before? Yes, because they're all the same. Are you with me on this? You understand what I'm saying, right? Like they all have the same storyline. Boy meets girl. Boy and girl fall in love. Boy does something stupid, which we've seen coming all along from the very beginning of the movie, have we not? And then there's this conflict, and then at the end of the movie, there's this grand scene where boy shows back up and does the right thing. And boy and girl are in love again, and they live happily ever after. Am I not right? Is that the storyline of every Hallmark movie? And we expect our lives to be just like that, don't we? Like we know that we're not going to live a life without conflict or some trouble or some problems, but hey, it's supposed to be resolved in 90 minutes. And we know that everybody's going to live. Like we expect our life to be lived like a sitcom of Friends, do we not? Right? Like in 30 minutes, we know that Joey's going to do something stupid, right? Say something stupid. We know that Ross is going to talk about dinosaurs. We know that Phoebe's going to talk about Smelly Cat. We know something's going to happen in 30 minutes. There's going to be a side story that doesn't have anything to do with the real story. But in 30 minutes, everybody is living happily ever after again, right? That's any sitcom. And we expect our lives to follow that script. And when our life doesn't follow that script, we go, where's God? Where's Waldo? Where's happily ever after? This is supposed to be over by now. This is supposed to be resolved by now. And when it's not, we want to know why our faith isn't working. We understand what Habakkuk is saying. You applied for entrance into the college of your dreams, and they said no. You've been praying all of your life for a life partner, for your husband or for your wife, and Mr. or Mrs. Right hasn't walked into the scene yet. You've been praying for healing, and the doctor says that the chemotherapy is not working. You applied for the new job, but they hired someone else. You didn't expect to be divorced, but yet here you are. You always wanted more children, but somehow that's not happening. You took your life savings and you invested it into this business venture, and now, a year later, it's gone nowhere. The sitcom hasn't gone like we want it to go. The Hallmark movie didn't end the way we think it's supposed to end, and so we begin to cry, just like Habakkuk began to cry. Where are you, God? Why are you going to allow this to continue to happen? What are you going to do about this? And listen, if you can't relate to something specific like that, then can we just all express here together this morning that we understand what this feels like? Where was God a couple of weeks ago in that Walmart in El Paso, or in downtown Dayton, Ohio, or on the campuses of Columbine and Parkland, Florida, and Sandy Hook. Where was God in all of that? Where was God on the campus of Virginia Tech? Where was God in that? Where was God in the Holocaust in our history? Or other racial injustices that have been part of our history and even exist today? Yes, even here in the place you and I live today. Where is God in all of that? We understand what it's like to cry out, "Where are you?" To feel like God is absent. And if we keep reading from Habakkuk's story, we might find that our story follows his, just like we expect it to follow a Hallmark movie or a sitcom. Watch, if you go down to verse 5 of chapter 1. Now, God is answering Habakkuk. So Habakkuk's cried out, "Where are you in all this?" And now God is answering Habakkuk, and here's what he says. "Look among the nations and see." It's like God saying, open your eyes and see. "Wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans," these are the Babylonians, "that bitter and hasty nation who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own." Here's what he's telling Habakkuk. Habakkuk, you can't see it. You think I'm not in play. You think I'm nowhere to be found. But behind the scenes, I'm raising up a people who are going to invade your people and conquer you and carry you off into captivity. Wait, God. Okay. So you're there, but now you're just doing it wrong. This is not the way the script goes. This is not how it's supposed to work out. This is not how the ending is supposed to happen. God's like, I'm not at the ending yet. But I am working even when you can't see it. I am there even when you can't feel it. I am around even when you don't know it. It's like a parent who's teaching their child to ride a bicycle. You ever done that or seen that happen? A parent who's teaching. So you start with training wheels, right? And the parent's just out there watching while the kid's riding with training wheels. And then it's time to take the training wheels off. And so you take the training wheels off, and then the parent, the dad is holding the bicycle while the child is riding down the sidewalk or down the street. And then the child begins to get a little bit better. And so now the dad is running down the sidewalk or down the street, right? I did this. And they start to get so good that like you're thinking, man, I'm out of shape. I can't keep up anymore. I can't hold on anymore. And so eventually they get to the point where they get so good that the parent begins to let go of the bicycle. And they crash. And they look around and say, "Where were you? Why aren't you holding the bicycle? What? You're not doing it right." But eventually, the parent can just stand and watch because the child's learned to ride the bicycle without any help. But all along, the parent is there. That's how God is with us. Like, we know it's best for the child to crash a time or two to learn how to ride their bike, and God knows that's best for us too. And sometimes we want to know, where are you? Why did you let go of our bicycle? Why did you let us go? And God knows, just like the parent knows, that it's best for him to let go. There's an old poem that expresses this. There's actually several versions of this poem written. Many of you are probably familiar with it. It's called Footprints in the Sand. You're probably familiar with the term footprints. Some of you may think it's cheesy, but listen to the words this morning of this poem that was written so long ago that talks to this point of God working even when we can't see it. It says, "One night I dreamed a dream. As I was walking along the beach with my Lord, across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I needed you the most, you would leave me. And he whispered, my precious child, I love you and will never leave you. Never, ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. God is always with us, even when we can't see him, even when we don't feel him, even when we don't think he's there, even in the hardest of times. God is always with you. Always. He's always working, even when we can't see him working. Or even, listen, even if we don't agree with the way he's working, he's always with us. And so Habakkuk is left to question again, and he does so in the remainder of chapter 1. God answers again, because Habakkuk's basically like, all right. So you're there. You're working. I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't understand it, but you're there. Now what am I supposed to do? And God answers Habakkuk again. Chapter 2, verse 3. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end, it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. How many of you are on Facebook and you see that thing, it's on the video and it says, wait for it? How many of you actually wait for it? It's because we're not good at waiting. Can we just all agree that we do not like to wait? Here God is telling Habakkuk, I'm coming through. It's going to be even better than you thought, but wait for it, Habakkuk. Wait for it. We don't like those words. We are terrible at waiting. Like if we don't expect our life to be like Hallmark movie or a Friends sitcom, then here's what we expect our life to be like. We expect it to be like the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. Am I right? We expect to pull up and we expect God to meet us immediately and take our order. And we want to tell God exactly what we want left off and what we want added, and we expect he's going to take our order, and we're going to drive around very promptly. We don't even wait at the window. It's handed to us. It's like God saying, here you go, my pleasure. Right? That's what we expect in our life with God. We don't like to wait. And instead, sometimes what happens is we find ourselves in the Whataburger line. You're from Texas, you know what I mean, right? Like we're going to wait for Whataburger because there is a burger, it's better than Whataburger. No. Sometimes the best things are worth waiting for. We got to wait for. Or even worse, we think our life is like waiting in line at Popeyes. And then we get there and there's no chicken sandwiches left, right? You're up to date on all that controversy right now? See, that's how we expect our lives to go. We're not good at waiting. We don't want to wait at the doctor's office. We don't want to wait in traffic. We don't want to wait in anywhere. When I was growing up, I learned the value of waiting. There were days that me and my brother would be home, or maybe it was just me and my mom was home, but our dad was not there. We would be getting in trouble. My mom would tolerate it. She would tolerate it. She would tolerate it. And eventually we would hear these words: wait until your father gets home. We had this little chair in our bathroom, and when we heard those words, we had to go and we had to sit in that chair and wait for Dad to get home. Do you know what the dread of waiting for your father to get home is like? Do you know what that's like? Like, my dad was a loving dad, never laid a hand. I mean, he disciplined appropriately, but listen to me. The discipline was never as bad as the waiting, because we don't like to wait. And sometimes we think waiting on God is just like waiting for our dad to get home. That's not the picture that Habakkuk gets here. The picture that Habakkuk gets here is this word that shows up in chapter 2, verse 3. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. Just underline or circle that word appointed. That appointed time literally means anointed. It means God's divine time, God's right time, God's perfect time. That in God's perfect time, in His divine time, He will do what He's promised He will do. It's this concept of like giving birth to babies, right? Like it's a 9-month gestation period. There's a due date, but in God's due time, in God's appointed time, the baby will come. We have 2 boys. Our first one came, let's say in God's appointed time, at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now that's not when he came. That's when Amy woke me up and said, I think I have appendicitis. Appendicitis? Where's that coming from? She didn't know it was labor pains, right? So she's like, I think we need to go to the hospital. I'm like, okay, can I take a shower first? She's like, yeah, take a shower. I take a shower, get out of the shower, and I hear, hurry up! We get in the car, and we start rushing to the hospital, and we're actually going down Indiana Avenue here in Lubbock, and you know how Indiana does those dips, right? And so I'm going as fast because she's like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And then I hit one of those dips, and she's like, slow down, right? And this is all the way to the hospital. 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we waited until 5:30 that night for him to be born. Our second one, he was actually a week late, past his due date. Amy swears that if we hadn't induced labor on him, she would still be pregnant. We show up at the hospital, 8 o'clock in the morning. By the way, this is the way to go. This is how we want it to go with God, isn't it? We show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, they begin the induction. The doctor says, I'll be back at lunch to deliver this baby boy. We're sitting there that morning, and Amy begins to have these contractions, hard, tough contractions. But I'm looking at the monitor, and there's nothing on the monitor, right? And she's like, complaining, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, gosh, she just needs to get over this, right? Because nothing, I'll change this the next service. Nothing is showing up. Nothing is showing up on the monitor. Finally, a nurse comes in. She looks at the monitor, and she's like, oh, dear, your monitor's not even hooked up right. They hook it up right, and all of a sudden on the monitor, these big spikes, and I'm like, help, somebody help, right? 11:40, the nurses are like, we're having this baby. I'm like, the doctor's not here. She said she'd be back at lunch. You got to wait till lunch. No, the baby's coming now. Because babies come at the divine time. The appointed time. That's how it is with God. His promises come in His time, the right time, the divine time, an appointed time, an anointed time, not our time. And here's what God is telling Habakkuk: wait. You see, sometimes we think our faith isn't working. We think God is absent because we don't want to wait. God just says, wait. Wait. Wait for my anointed time. He tells us one other thing. We see it in Habakkuk chapter 3. Actually, almost the very last verses of the book of Habakkuk, 17 and 18. Habakkuk and God have gone back and forth, questioning and answering. And finally, here's Habakkuk's confession. Here's what he says to God. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no flood, the flocks be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord and take joy in the God of my salvation. Listen to what Habakkuk's saying. He's saying, look, even though it's not working the way I want it to work, even though it's not happening at the time I think it should happen, I will wait and I will trust. Even though it doesn't look like God's doing anything, even though it doesn't look like God's showing up, even though it doesn't look like anything is changing in my situation or my circumstance or the world, I will trust. I will wait and I will trust. Can I put this into a modern translation for us this morning? It might read something like this. Even though my spouse said till death do us part and didn't live up to their word, I will trust. Even though I raised my kids to know better and they're making very scary decisions right now, I will trust. Even though I've prayed for their health to get better and they're getting worse, I will trust. Even though our house isn't selling and we're on the line, I will trust. Even though finances are tough and it's going to cost $400 to repair my car, I will trust. Even though I don't like it, even though I don't understand it, even though he could and I think he should, but he's not, I will trust. Listen, it's all boiled down to this. Habakkuk says, God, where are you? God says, Habakkuk, I'm working even when you don't know I'm working or you can't see it. Habakkuk says, fine, I will wait and I will trust. So I want you to close your eyes this morning and I'm going to say a prayer over you. And if you've got something specific in your life right now, if it's a situation, if it's a circumstance, if you're thinking that God is a lot like Waldo and he's not anywhere to be found, or he's not coming through the way you think he should come through, or he's not answering the way you want him to answer, then I want you to just pray these words over that situation. Maybe you know somebody else and you want to pray on behalf of their situation. Maybe you can just identify with our world and where we're at with things that are happening and you just want to pray it over our world or over our city or over our place. Just listen, just close your eyes and listen to these words and pray these words. God, you are still in charge. And you are good. And you are true. And you are faithful. And you are all-knowing, all-powerful, and ever-present. Ever-present. God, this world seems upside down, but I know you are still there. God, this circumstance doesn't seem right, but I know you are still there. God, you are sovereign, and I know you have a plan. God, I know that you are much bigger than anything I can see right now. God, I respect that you are God and I am not. I know that your timing is not my timing. I know your ways are higher than I will ever understand. And I know that you have everything under control. And so I will wait and trust. I will wait and I will trust. I will wait and I will trust. Our prayer team is going to come up to the front. If you need someone to pray into your waiting and trusting, they're here ready to pray for you and over you. If you need to pray into someone else's waiting and trusting, they're here to pray into someone else's waiting and trusting. God, I will wait and I will trust.